Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Welcome to our ritual night talk for November 23rd. I'm Scott Stenwick, your host for these ritual night events, presented under the auspices of Leaping Laughter OTO in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Before I go any further, got to do the YouTube spiel. Like, subscribe, request notifications. That way you'll always know when we go live with these ritual night talk streaming events, when we upload a new video, all that stuff. Now, I am also going to lead off with an important and hopefully welcome announcement. I talked about when videos are uploaded, and the reason I'm mentioning that now, and I haven't mentioned it before when I've been doing all the streaming, is that we are going to be restarting the in-person ritual workshop events at Leaping Laughter Lodge. Okay, now, for now, we can't do the thing where it's like a drop-in event. People just show up. Folks are going to have to RSVP, and folks are going to have to be vaccinated to attend to start, since we're still under some COVID restrictions. I'm hoping that, eventually this COVID thing blows over and, we will no longer have a COVID board to worry about from Grand Lodge to run things by. And I know they feel the same way. They'd like to, not be in a position to do some of this stuff either. So at any rate, so if you would like to attend the ritual workshop events, make sure to RSVP to me personally, scott@iphouse.com. If you're local to the Twin Cities area and or, you want to travel for a weeknight evening event, it's on Tuesdays. But what that also means, though, is that I got some extra work to do because I'm not going to let the channel go and do nothing either. Okay, so the plan is going forward, we're going to be doing an in-person ritual workshop event where folks can work on their ritual forms, learn magic, and all that kind of stuff. And also, I'll be putting up a video every week on Tuesdays. About a half-hour video again on some topic, kind of like some of the stuff I've been talking about, and I'll go ahead and record that. The Sagittarius Elixir next week is going to be done in person at the ritual night, and I will also record it and upload it on the channel so we can see how that works. And that should be a good thing. Hoping everything works well with the technology and stuff. Streaming at the lodge is kind of difficult because we don't have internet service there, and so you got to tether it off a phone and stuff. And in my experience, depending on the phone you have, depending on some other stuff, that may work better or worse. But at any rate, so that's what we're going to be doing going forward. Want to make that announcement. Folks should contact me if you want to be involved in and you want to attend the in-person ritual workshop events, which will be happening Tuesday evenings in this same time slot. Now, tonight I am going to talk about Earthbound spirits. And I actually have a lot of experience with these kinds of spirits, maybe more so than, I should have. And it goes back to like my teen years, back when I was just kind of figuring out, I was really interested in psychic stuff. I was really interested in magic. I hadn't really buckled down and gotten disciplined about, here's how you actually practice magic and so on. That was something that was more, started happening, around the time, senior year of high school, around the time I went off to college. But the thing is that one of the things I did in my teen years is I played around with a Ouija board a lot. Okay. And so now we've got the Christians on here going, see, he played with a Ouija board and he's like in the OTO and that's evil, right? Okay. Well, a couple of things to say about Ouija boards. First of all, they can get you in contact with earthbound spirits. That's not a complete myth. They actually are a pretty good tool for it. But second, the Ouija board itself doesn't really have anything to do with what you're contacting. Okay. The Ouija board is just a tool, and the planchette, it isn't being moved by the hand of a spirit. It's being moved by this thing called the ideomotor effect, which is in your fingers. Any skeptic will tell you that. Now, what a skeptic won't tell you, and what's different about it, is that the ideomotor effect can link to your psychic senses. And so the planchette on a Ouija board, if you are getting psychic impressions that are being translated through this ideomotor effect, the planchette can actually give you meaningful information. This is similar to how a pendulum works. You need a pendulum, you have it go yes, no. It's like there's no spirit pulling that. What it is you're connecting with your psychic senses, and the ideomotor effect is making it spin a certain way or go back and forth a certain way or what have you. You can actually experiment with this on a Ouija board. If you like get into the right kind of like trance state or something, sit down at the planchette by yourself. Yeah, I know you're not supposed to do it by yourself, but hear me out. Okay, the test is actually really simple. And what you do is you put your fingers on the Ouija board and you try to just relax your fingers so it feels like you're getting a little bit of movement on the planchette. And then just visualize in your mind a word. Okay. It doesn't matter what the word is. What'll happen is eventually that movement is going to start to spell out the word if you hold it long enough. And that's essentially how the whole thing works. So if there was no, psychism or anything like that, right? Well, it would just be, oh, well, the thing is just kind of telling you what you want to hear. And that's true if your psychic senses are not turned on. Okay. So the key to getting useful information from a Ouija board is to have your psychic senses turned on. One of the reasons that people have, sometimes have, scarier stuff happen with a Ouija board when there's a number of people there is, well, only one person really needs to have that psychic sense turned on. And, psychic ability that is at like a functional level is not that unusual in the population. So if you get a group of like 4 or 5 people, you probably have somebody who's psychic enough to connect to something. And it's that person's psychic ability, which is actually kind of driving the whole thing. So if their ideomotor effect is running off their psychic abilities and other people are just relaxing, their minds are clear, they're not getting psychic information, their motions are going to be random. This person's motion are going to be purposeful. So like, no, you're moving it. No, I'm totally not moving it. That type of thing, right? Also there's the thing of holding the Ouija board on your knees, where it's like you're supposed to do that. I mean, I never did that. I did it on tables, but if you're holding it on your knees, it's possible like somebody's knee could dip or something like that, and then it moves on its own. And I think that's where most of those stories come from. Again, you're talking about a plastic planchette. Spirits have a hard time moving plastic to begin with. If you had a wood one, okay, maybe a little bit better. If you had one that was built like a talismanic kind of device, which is actually an interesting idea that I've never actually gone and explored and experimented with. You could build this thing and it could be like a talisman. It could have, all kinds of seals and stuff on it. You can empower it a certain way. You could conjure up probably Raphael, angel of air, that's divination, or you could conjure up the angel Scorpio, that's necromancy, if you specifically want to communicate with the spirits of the dead. Many earthbound spirits are spirits of the dead, and so forth. And you could have them power the thing up, and it could work like a real magical talisman. And then you might actually see some probability shifting there, and some, maybe it would have the ability to activate latent psychic ability in people who used it. But anyway, people don't generally do that. The other thing about it that people don't generally do is they don't do ritual ceremonial forms, anything like that, to really be disciplined about their approach to working with it. And so, and then the fundamentalist Christians, the board's possessed by a demon, you've got to go burn it or something. Well, the board's not possessed by a demon. Okay, if anything, if there's a demon, what it's doing is it's connecting to the psychic senses of one of the people who's using the board, or maybe more. That can happen. It doesn't always happen. It's actually fairly unusual. Usually you get earthbounds on a Ouija board. Usually you're not going to get like demons or something unless, you've got, the right kind of sigil and conjuration. Demons don't just randomly show up. Okay. You ask anybody who does grimoire magic, there's a whole procedure that you do to get them to show up. And it's like, they don't just like appear otherwise out of nowhere. It's like, there's actual magic to it. Maybe unless somebody had like a really high level psychic ability linked to some of these spirits or something, it's possible, because there are people who are psychic enough that they wind up getting like intrusive information and stuff. But again, the answer to that is do learn magic, focus it, make sure that, you're turning on your powers when you want, you're turning them off when you want, so you don't get overwhelmed and so forth. Now, there are a number of things that I did with earthbound spirits on a Ouija board. So I've always been interested in that connection between science and magic, which I think anybody who watches this channel can be like, figuring this out. I mean, I think magic is a property in the natural world, just like, gravity or, air resistance or friction or, whatever, all these things that you study in physics. It's just that the effects they are weak effects, as in they are not as reliable, they're not as deterministic, and the effects on material events are not as strong. you can cast a spell on something to make it break. And I don't know, maybe if it's positioned really precariously or something like that, sometime over the next 24 hours, it'll fall off the shelf and break. Okay. If I have a baseball, okay, I can just throw the baseball at it. It'll break every time. And that's a pretty good example. Physics is easy to study and magic is hard to study because it's like, well, you could say, well, it could have fallen randomly. Well, right. But what magic is doing is it's saying, well, here's a thing that is not unlikely to happen. And why not have it happen now instead of another time? Again, weak effects, not magic that is weak per se. I've made that distinction before. Magic over time can be very powerful, transform your entire life, and everything really comes from that. On the mind, all of our knowledge, perceptions, motivations depend. And so if magic can, improve the mind, which I can tell you that it does, the deal is that, of course, magic is powerful, but it's not the same kind of powerful as taking that baseball and throwing it at that object, assuming that I can hit it, which is an open question given my motor skills, which are not very good. The baseball, if it hits the thing, and the thing is like in a remotely precarious position, is always going to fall and break. I mean, every single time. Whereas magic, okay, might work sometimes, might not work another time, but the thing is more likely to get broken than it otherwise would be. And that's what we're doing when we're working with magic. So a couple of things about the character. So a couple of things characteristics of earthbound spirits that I have learned is, okay, so first of all, earthbound spirits and earthly spirits aren't the same thing. There are some spirits that, while spirits, are native to kind of our same realm of existence. They're not celestial, they're not chthonic, they're related to stuff that's around here with us. So this would be things like nature spirits, a lot of elemental spirits. Celestial spirits and chthonic spirits are native to different realms. And so earthbound spirits are usually spirits of people that have died. And for whatever reason, they can't figure out how to move on or move forward. Okay. So when people die, there is this kind of a spirit form that, most mediums, most psychics believe hangs around for a period of time. There's different stuff about how exactly it works in different spiritual systems. What I will say is the one you're most familiar with is the Christian system in the United States anyway, where, okay, there's heaven and there's hell. And, the literal, if you're a good spirit, if your soul is good, you go to hell. If your soul is evil, you go to hell. So it's good you go to heaven. I'm sorry. Or maybe I'm thinking of that, the heaven in South Park, which is like that, the heaven in South Park, which is like all populated by Mormons, and they're like Saddam Hussein gets up there and they're going, "Hey everybody, let's do a skit about how alcohol destroys families." And Saddam was like, "No, okay, well." So maybe I was thinking that when I flipped it, but okay, good souls go to heaven and bad souls go to hell is hopelessly oversimplified. Okay, and this is the thing; it is hopelessly oversimplified. And the thing about it is that, well, actually, chthonic spirits aren't necessarily demons or evil. Celestial spirits aren't necessarily good angels either. Generally, I found that the celestials are a little more friendly than the chthonics, but it's important to know that there are some angels who, have, the frickin' flaming sword, right? There are angels that are, not necessarily little cute cherubs and stuff like that. And, some of them are pretty powerful. Like Zamael, okay, is the angel of Mars. Okay, and Zamael has also been associated with Samael, Satan, and so on. But there's something to that, though. Zamael is not a fallen anything. Zamael is an angel. And Zamael is just not that friendly, at least to me. And probably a fair number of other people. Zamael's all bouncy. I mean, I've worked with them and gotten results with them. But he's kind of, anyway, I'm rambling off a little bit here. So Zamael is just a little bit harsher to work with than, some of the, like, say, an angel of Venus or something like that, just because martial energy is what it is. So earthbound spirits generally are people who've died, and they either are too attached to something in the material world to move on, or they're just not smart enough to figure out how to move on. One of the traps that people get into talking to these mediums, and people use Ouija boards, and you can actually use a Ouija board, and actually if you get really good at it helps to amplify your mediumistic abilities. You kind of get to a point where you can communicate psychically. That's reported by a number of people. I've experienced that myself. And the thing about it is that basically earthbound spirits are bored. Okay, they really have nothing to do. They're dead. They're either linked to something or confused, and they're looking for anybody who will pay attention to them. And earthbound spirits are usually the cause behind things like legitimate hauntings. And so if you go out to clear a house, right, some friend says, "Hey, I've got a house that needs to get cleared." Okay, you want to check for earthbound spirits first. That's the main thing you're going to look for on a magical perspective. Now, first, though, you want to debunk it. Remember skepticism. Okay, go into the house. You want to see if there are things like high electromagnetic fields. You want to see if there are things that make weird noises. You want to see if there are parts of the house where for whatever reason, the house could make a noise. The house could create some kind of an optical illusion, something like that. And so you really want to make, and all like cold spots, okay, like find places where drafts are coming in. There's a draft over here or something like that. Okay, so the thing is that you want to make sure that all that stuff has been satisfied before you immediately jump to a paranormal explanation. And that's one of the things. I always like it when I see like a ghost hunting or something that go around. Oh well, this is caused by an echo from here. Then you've got a draft over here, and then this is putting off all this electromagnetism. So if somebody is electromagnetically sensitive, that can mess with your brain and your perceptions a little bit. Want to exclude all that stuff. Okay. Once you do that, though, you could be fairly confident that what you're probably dealing with is an earthbound spirit. And there's a couple of good things about earthbound spirits. So earthbound spirits can influence you psychologically. They can make you anxious. They can make you scared. But they can't really do a lot. I found that spirits, they can trip EMF detectors a little bit, so they can cause like some electromagnetism. There's some evidence they can mess a little bit with electronic devices, like drain batteries, things like that. Really, we're not talking about anything that dangerous, but they have this mind-to-mind ability that they can like project stuff at you, so you can be like scared of something that you wouldn't otherwise be scared of. The other thing that they could do is they could take information the other way. They can read your mind. And so if you got an earthbound spirit that can read your mind and it gets in contact with somebody who's psychic enough to talk to it, what it's going to do is it's going to try to keep them on the hook, so to speak. So, just like, like a telemarketing scammer. Okay. Can I hear in my mind? I can. I have never been able to record like the kind of like EVP stuff with any real reliability. I think most EVPs I'm fairly skeptical of, because in a lot of cases, if you listen to it, and somebody doesn't tell you what it's supposedly saying, you listen to it and it really just kind of sounds like a noise. But definitely, I mean, if I concentrate and I connect my mind with the spirit, just like I'm communicating with the spirit, it does kind of sound like a voice in my mind. Maybe a little easier for me to distinguish than other people. I don't have an internal narrative like at all. So I don't think in words. So it's like when words come across, it's like, oh, it's really obvious to me. Not everybody has a brain like that, but in my case, mine does work like that. So the thing is, it's like, so what's going on is it's psychic information that's being received into your brain. It's being mapped onto your sense of hearing. So internally, you perceive it as a voice, but it's not something that you could record in the exterior room, that type of thing. Which, by the way, I also think is the case of physical evocation of spirits. Sorry, anybody who believes differently. I think it's a matter of psychic information being mapped onto your visual senses. And it's great. You could do these techniques and you can get something that really kind of physically looks like it's there. but haven't found that that makes the information any more reliably. Haven't found that you could record it with a video camera, none of that stuff. It's all about your psychic senses bringing in the information. And the deal is that Earthbounds can do most of the mischief that they do by sending psychic information to you and reading your mind. And so, uh, but what they're really good at is they're really good at, well, they could read your mind, right? And so they could see, oh, this is the kind of thing this person is interested in. So what they could do is they could tailor their communications to what you really want to hear. Okay. And so, like any spirit, it's very important if you've got one of these to test them. They cannot see the future. Sometimes they'll claim to see the future. When spirits see the future, it's like when magicians see the future. You project yourself and what you see. It really is. It's like a branching chain of things. I mean, you could say that probably, something that isn't on the branch isn't going to happen, but because time is not just a line, I mean, it splits off into a bunch of different lines. Neither magicians nor spirits can say definitively what the future is going to be. But sometimes they'll tell you, they can, oh, this is going to happen to you. And so it's like, well, they don't really have the ability to see that. Now, what they can see is they can see the state of things in the physical world relatively close to their area. Like, for example, I could have a spirit go off and, I wouldn't know it was posted like on a sign, on a business down the road. And I'd say, go read that to me. And then I would go check it and I'd see, all right, did the spirit really tell me what it was? And it's usually not exact, but if you've got a real spirit, it's going to be surprisingly close. It may be word for word, but it'll be like, oh, there's like, 5 words on that sign that somebody put up, and the spirit will be able to hit like 3 or 4 of them, and maybe something that's not there or whatnot. So it's not completely exact. And some of it also has to do with your level of focus too. So magical practice will bring up, your focus, and what that's going to do is that's going to help you distinguish your own thoughts from thoughts of the spirit. And that's true of earthbounds, it's true of angels, it's true of demons, it's true of any spirit you work with. So when earthbounds go around and, they decide, okay, and some people are motivated different ways. If there are people who, their temperament is such that, they're going to pay a lot more attention to something that's really scary, well, earthbound spirits are going to try to scare them. If, if it's somebody who, is, really interested in, like, say, I was like, I want to combine science and magic to make magic really powerful, they'll talk to you about that. And and usually the information they give you isn't very useful. Spirits are not wise by virtue of being spirits. And I think that's something that a lot of New Agers kind of get wrong. They think, oh, we're talking to a legitimate spirit, you must be wise. Well, that isn't true. Okay, an earthbound spirit is no wiser than it was in life. And remember, earthbound spirits are spirits that, 1, are either too attached to something to move on, or 2, they literally can't figure out how to move on. We're not talking about smart spirits here. We're also not talking about wise spirits. But because they can read your mind, they can play games with you. And so if you think, oh, this kind of thing would show me that the spirit is really wise, if you think something like that, you may get something similar from the spirit fairly quickly. Or, maybe the spirit will hold off a bit before doing that. But anyway, the point is that you shouldn't be scared of them, even though they can make you anxious. You really shouldn't necessarily take anything they tell you as true without testing it, because they do like to lie. They're tell you whatever they think will keep you thinking about them, keep you focused on them, keep you afraid of them, keep you working with them, whatever. Okay. And the deal is that, that's their whole shtick. Their whole shtick is they want to keep you on the line as long as possible. And if that escalates to, doing what limited physical things they could do around your house, okay, that starts to rise to the level of like a haunting, right? Where you got like a ghost, or this is a spirit that is choosing to do this stuff. One of the interesting things that you see in the paranormal literature is that there's this whole thing about never bless the house. I don't know if you've seen this on paranormal shows. They're supposedly like real stories of what happened. They bring somebody out to bless the house gets quiet, and then everything comes back with a vengeance, like not that much afterwards. Maybe if you got a few days reprieve from that. And so the deal is that earthbound spirits usually aren't anchored in one spot. Or, if they are, the thing they're obsessed with that's keeping them here can be in a spot, and they have some sort of a range. But a lot of that has to do with, and I don't know what the range is. I don't think it's ever really been measured. But one of the things about a spirit is it is a coherent entity. And so it could say, oh, somebody's coming in to bless the house. It can, it gets the hell out of there. I mean, you don't have to be that smart to do that. But then, all right, so once it thinks the coast is clear, oh, okay, I'll come back. And so that's I think the origin of that never bless the house trope. Okay, and if people were scared enough to bless the house, probably the spirit was working with fear before, so now it's going to come back and really try to scare somebody. It seems like stuff like exorcisms, especially like leaving stuff around the house, that seems like that works a little better, but there's a lot of cases where that doesn't work too. And some of that is also related to the whole Christian metaphysics, how that relates with ghosts and things like the rite of exorcism is a very interesting ritual. It goes back to the Middle Ages, inspired a lot of ceremonial magic. And on certain types of spirits, it works very well. But it doesn't, I'm not 100% convinced it works on every earthbound spirit, since I've read a lot of accounts where, an exorcism, it's kind of like a house blessing, but it lasts longer and then stuff starts happening again. So I'd have to do a more comprehensive study on that. But so the thing about it is, though, is that mostly these spirits are just looking for attention, and they can influence you. They can make you see things. They can make you feel things, but they can't generally really injure you that badly. Sometimes I mean, people who drink a lot or take drugs or something like that, depending on the drug, of course, can sometimes be influenced more easily. But that's again kind of a variable thing. Now, how do you deal with them? Okay, well, see, me, I've always wanted to have a haunted house, right? Okay, I want a ghost in my house, so then I could figure out a way to amplify its powers and like do fun stuff, like have friends over and like have it bring me drinks from the kitchen, right? Wouldn't that be great? Sitting there with your fellow magicians, you're like, whatever the name of the spirit, bring me a drink, and then a drink like floats in from the kitchen. I'm not convinced that most earthbounds are that powerful. Even stuff like poltergeist, usually it's like falling and throwing. Usually it's levitating like all through the house. Probably requires too much power. But it would be really fun to get it to work. But what I found is that even though I've owned old houses, that I have not owned a house that is newer than 1889. That's the newest house I've owned. The current one is 1886. And the thing about that is well, those houses, in theory, they should be old enough to be haunted. And even this one, when I bought it, because oh yeah, there's like some paranormal stuff going on, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And I don't know, I had like a couple of incidents like early on when we moved in, but it's like it just kind of quieted itself down. And one of the things I do is I do my daily magical practices here in this house. And so earthbound spirits can't necessarily influence a lot of things that are physical, but magic can do a lot of damage to them. I mean, if I were to conjure up, some kind of a specific, banishing thing, I could injure them if they didn't get out of the way. If I want to call up Angel of Scorpio and do some necromantic work, well, that Angel of Scorpio can basically grab them and drag them around. And so, because spirits of the dead, angel rules over them. And so, I mean, so that's the thing that they don't really want to be involved in. So what I find that generally speaking, spirits actually run away from places where you do a lot of magic, especially if you have a lot of daily practice. Now, if you're doing a lot of like invocations and you're not banishing stuff, your mileage may vary, right? But the thing is that generally speaking, just in terms of regular magical fields, they don't really want to be caught in some magician's magical field. And because of there can be consequences for them. And I think, it probably is like kind of an instinctive thing for them. They are pretty good at, just like getting out of the way. And so to deal with them, first, to deal with these kinds of spirits, if they're messing with you or you meet one on a Ouija board and then you get all obsessed with it or something like that, well, basic magical practices work great. Use the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram. I know everybody says that, but if you do it, what it's going to do is the spirit's got to hook into your aura. It's going to just cut that. So it's a similar thing to that cutting away practice that you see some pagans do, for example. And so you're cutting these connections into your aura. Now, the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, primarily works in the microcosm. That is your psyche and your aura. Okay. So if you want something bigger to banish a space, you will want to use something like the lesser banishing ritual, the hexagram being the symbol of the macrocosm. And so if you do your lesser banishing pentagram, your lesser banishing hexagram, what's going to happen is that that's going to pretty much take the area that you did the ritual in. It's going to just banish paranormal influences, both psychologically and macrocosmically externally. If you want to make your house impervious to haunting, not sure why you'd want to do this, but here's a method. You can build a talisman, and you can conjure the angel of Scorpio, who rules over these spirits, to empower this talisman to create a field of whatever size you want around your property that spirits are expelled from and no spirit can enter. No earthbound spirit of the dead can enter, and where spirits of the dead are expelled. Not necessarily all spirits. You do that like things like angels and demons can still get through that unless you specifically make one for angels and demons. Right? Different celestials, chthonics, totally different class of spirit. But that would be a way to do that. You could, and that talisman, if you set that up, using your regular servitor logic to have it, feed itself off of ambient energy and replenish itself, and do whatever steps necessary to make sure nothing haunts your house. I mean, nothing is going to haunt your house. And furthermore, if you've got something like that and it's working, and you start getting weird effects, always debunk it, because you know what? If you're dealing with it magically, it could be something mundane. If you're electrosensitive, okay, well, a talisman to keep out spirits isn't necessarily going to do anything for that, right? You want to see, all right, well, do I have lights that are throwing a lot of EMF, or circuit boxes or whatever, ground a bunch of stuff? I mean, do the things that you need to do to reduce the EMF in your environment if you're sensitive like that and having issues related to that. So likewise, this whole idea, this hysteria about Ouija boards, getting back to the beginning, it's like, yeah, there's really, the Ouija board itself is not actually dangerous. Okay. It has to do with, but it can let you get in touch with some things psychically that, okay, maybe can freak you out, maybe can scare you, maybe, aren't something that you want to be dealing with. So the correct way to do Ouija board, and Aleister Crowley, by the way, did write a bit on the Ouija board and how to use it. The key to it is you want to use it in the context of a magical ritual. What you're going to do is you are going to, invoke, that is, call into your sphere of consciousness the spirit that you want to talk to on the Ouija board. And then you're going to use the board to see, what you get for messages from that spirit. Okay. And if you've got multiple people, all the better. That does give a little more of a check on, well, I'm thinking this, you're thinking this, you're thinking this, and people like putting their own thoughts into the thing. But that is real. And it's interesting because when you do that, I've done a few experiments with that. It's interesting. The board doesn't work nearly as crazy as it did when I was a teenager. I used, so I made my own board out of wood, and it was just polished down. And then I used a wine glass as a planchette. I mean, I tried that, same thing, because you have glass, not plastic. I figured, it's better. You just turn the wine glass over and you put your finger on top of it. And the board doesn't move nearly as much as it did when I was a kid if you're doing magical practice. And that's really interesting. So it actually can be hard to get messages off the thing if you're doing it in a magical context, because you're not just calling in whatever's there. Okay. It's like the idea of, being a medium. Is there a spirit? Is there a spirit there? Is anybody there? Is literally the Yoo-hoo BC school of invocation. You're just inviting anything that happens to be around because you want to talk to it. And maybe you do. Okay, that method, if you want to just, I want to find out who the spirits of this place are, I want to talk to them, you can use something like that. But I mean, you can also do a regular magical circle, set up your board, do some kind of a conjuration of, I want to talk to the spirits of this place or something like that. And so you're opening your ritual, you're limiting to spirits of the place and stuff like that. And, as I say, it's harder to get messages then. But it's interesting because if you get a message, what that's going to tell you is the message is very most likely from this thing that you invoked. And keep in mind, I'm talking about invocation, not evocation. And yeah, I know it's modern. The two words actually, they both mean to call up spirits, and the Grimoire people have given me crap on that on occasion. But in Golden Dawn parlance, which is what we use in Thelema, that's the vocabulary. Invocation is calling a spirit into your sphere of awareness, sphere of consciousness. Evocation is calling a spirit into an external containment structure. And so that is modern. It doesn't go back to the old grimoires. The old grimoires, they would talk about the terms could be used interchangeably in the old grimoires. So, like for example, Dee's conjurations for the Enochian spirits he called invocations. Well, and they're prayers, and another meaning of invocation is a prayer, whereas evocation doesn't have that meaning. But one of the meanings of invocation and evocation is to call up spirits. So effectively, they're synonyms in that context. The deal is that you're calling the spirit into your sphere of consciousness because you need to influence your psychic landscape to get something to appear on the board. It's not correct that, for example, I'll put the board inside my containment structure and then I'll just like reach in and touch it. It's like, well, the spirit's not in the board. And that's like the whole thing where, Christians get all confused about, you burn the board and it's like the problem is over. No, it's really not. Anybody, burning the board has no effect on whether anybody is obsessed with a spirit or even like possessed by a spirit. Really extreme cases of spirit possession, which is extremely rare, but it can happen. So those are some of the big takeaways. Number one, earthbound spirits generally can't hurt you. Not really. They can do like little physical things. They can make you a lot more scared of them than they should be. But that's psychic information that's being projected. If spirits can read minds, can they stay in your body? Okay, well, yes, but it's hard for them to do. Okay, all of the different magical systems that make use of spirit possession, that's calling the spirit into a person's body, and that person acts as the spirit. There's a very limited duration to how long they can do it. And there are a lot of limitations in terms of what they can do in that form. Okay. So spirit possession is a thing and it can happen, but it's not something that is going to be permanent. It's not something that's going to last for weeks or years. If you're dealing with something that looks like that and it's like, probably something else is going on, the spirit might be anchored somewhere else. It might be like coming back to influence you or something. And so to banish them, okay, again, if you do lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, followed by the lesser banishing ritual, the hexagram, you do that every day for a week, okay? That combination for sure is going to get a spirit out of there. Now, if you've got a problem with a spirit that, it vacates, but it comes back, talismans are better for that. So you got a spirit, the spirit keeps trying to mess with you. Let's say it's an earthbound spirit, so it's the spirit of the dead. What you want to do is conjure up the angel of Scorpio, make a talisman, and this talisman blocks this spirit from being able to possess you, enter your body, obsess you, etc., etc. Set it up so it feeds itself off the environment, so it can replenish itself, and then just go ahead and, be confident that you've got a defense against this particular spirit. You could make a general one for all earthbound spirits if that was something that you wanted to do. If you happen to live in a place where you have a lot of problems with that, that's a possibility. So you can keep all earthbound spirits from messing with you, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, and also for the most part, they don't really like magical practice. So one of the things that you can do too as a magician is when you do the daily practice, what's happening is your body of light, sphere of sensation, aura, whatever you want to call it, gets fortified and it becomes stronger. And so as it becomes stronger, it becomes more and more difficult for spirits to do that thing where they like latch on to it. And so building up the body of light like that is a good practice for magicians. And again, it's done by diligent daily practice, not necessarily extensive daily practice, but diligent. Your practice can take, 10 or 15 minutes or whatever. It doesn't have to be long, but you just make sure you do it every day, because what's going to happen is over time, that's going to keep building up your body of light, and you're going to just naturally become more impervious to this stuff. I mean, I can walk into haunted houses and absolutely nothing happens. I'm disappointed almost all the time. But I've been doing these practices for over 30 years. It's like my aura is not the kind of thing that a spirit can do anything with. And so I imagine that they kind of bail because they also know, oh, maybe they could see, oh, this is a guy who could just basically call a spirit over here and destroy it too. That might have something to do with it as well. But yeah, it's like I get all disappointed when I go and see haunted buildings. I never see anything. So, unless I deliberately call something up, and it's like, okay, that's, part of the fun of it is a surprise, right? I don't get a lot of surprising things like that after doing magic for as long as I've done it. So at any rate, getting up to 40 minutes, that gets to be a little long for YouTube. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here for now. We'll see what, so next week is going to be the Sagittarius Elixir, right? I am not going to be live streaming it. I will be recording it and posting it because I'll be doing it live at the temple. And then from then on, I'm going to be doing, various ritual night talks. If you'd like to, leave comments on these YouTube videos of things that you'd like to see, that would be great to have some suggestions to refer back to and, try and, get some stuff up that people are really interested in seeing, give them my take on, whatever holds people's attention out there. Just going to add, I do have the donation link. Feel like donating, that's awesome. I didn't mention it at the beginning, but no donation is too small. It goes to support the operation of Leaping Laughter Lodge. And with that, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you all very much for watching and have a great rest of the evening. Love is the law, love under will.